This next one is a movie that pleasantly surprised me. This was a sequel that I watched pretty quickly. And this is a sequel in a movie series that you don't really need to watch in order. The movie is Frankenstein Created Woman, a part of the Hammer series. And Peter Cushing, of course, starred in most of these except for Horror of Frankenstein, which was a reboot directed by Jimmy Sangster, who wrote Curse of Frankenstein, which started the whole thing, which started it all. And comes with these like little collectible cards. I still haven't opened the envelope. Yeah, though. See in here. I have to open it very neatly. So if I ever do a review of this movie, definitely, hopefully we'll have it open by then. But yeah, though, it was nice to see a female creation. But the concept is pretty strange, though, soul transference. But I enjoyed it very much. It was a very fun little movie. In some scenes, it definitely had the Clockwork Orange kind of villains, as James Rolfe said in his review for his Cinemassacre Monster Madness sequel-a-thon. But I would like to know how he turned the deformed woman into this babe. And she doesn't look like that in the movie. Just so you guys know, anyone who's curious, it was just a publicity shot. But she's still gorgeous, though. Look at her. Yeah. It's too bad her career died out as quick as it did. And I looked at a couple of the features on here, like World of Hammer, the episodes Curse of Frankenstein, and the other episode, Hammer stars Peter Cushing. And I love Peter Cushing. I really have gotten more and more into him over the years. He's just a wonderful actor. And in case if you didn't know, some people may not have known this, but he was John Carpenter's first choice to play Dr. Loomis in Halloween. And but the thing was, he as in Peter Cushing, the year before, 1977, had starred in, of course, Star Wars. And so I guess you could kind of say, in a way, Peter Cushing kind of graduated, I guess you could say, up into sort of like from being this kind of considered B-movie actor to now an A-grade actor, but which he sadly didn't really get to do because his health crashed, from what I heard and read. I have a book on him. Yeah, he really was too bad. Really was. He was just a great actor. And I think one of the one of his final movies was Real Genius, I think it was called, the one with Val Kilmer. And I remember talking with a Peter Cushing expert, and we got into a really big conversation with him. We got into a big conversation with each other about him, and Peter wanted to play the the cowboy kind of hero. He sadly never got to do that, but he seemed to be pretty grateful for these movies, as far as I know, especially with a 30-plus year long friendship with Christopher Lee. And But yeah, though, just to kind of wrap up that story with the Halloween thing, since I got a little sidetracked, um, pretty much what it was, how John Carpenter told the story was that uh, John called Peter Cushing's agent, and the offer that they gave him, and the agent and was like, he would never degrade himself to be in your low budget movie. And from what I've read too, Peter Cushing wasn't much for the slasher kind of movies. Kind of like Vincent Price, how he was about the slashers. He was like, they all end the same. It's like there's no art to them. And it's their opinions. I think somebody like Lon Chaney would probably have gotten a kick, would have gotten a huge kick out of the horror movies that be made today, I'm sure, since he was a master of the macabre. This next one is a really good sequel. I mean, as I said in my other one, I was a fan of the last two more. I mean, I watched this to kind of catch up because I wanted to see the last one in the theater before it ran out, since I didn't see the second and the third in the theater and have that amazing movie theater viewing experience with them. It was The Hunger Games, Catching Fire. I know there were a couple people who thought this movie took way too long to get started, but I have to admit I disagree. I really thought this movie got going pretty quick. I could definitely say that the way that my friend OCP Communications was about the movie, like saying that he thought it took way too long of a build up before stuff actually happened, like the first hour or so. That's how I felt about the first one. And I still love the first one. I saw that one in the theater and I had a blast, but after seeing seeing all of them now, I really think the sequels were better. I thought they were much more action packed, and they kept my attention more. It was just something that I liked better. And, that's all I can say about that one. This next one is Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed, which was a movie I've owned for about like 9 or 10 years by this point. And I mean, I loved it. I think I like this a bit more than Frankenstein Created Woman, and I like it a bit more than Revenge of Frankenstein. Curse of Frankenstein is still my all-time favorite of the Hammer Frankenstein movies. I just like that these movies, they did something different with each one. It didn't feel like the same movie. I still love the Universal movies a lot, but the last few ones kind of felt the same, especially with them pairing up the monsters. This movie is rated PG-13, and PG-13 wasn't even created until like the 80s because of movies like Poltergeist, Gremlins, and the original Red Dawn. Movies that were very teeter-tottery, because it's like they didn't have enough language or violence to be rated R, but yet they almost still were, and we're like, well, it's gotta be, but it can't really be PG. That finale was great. the burning house. Then this next one, this movie is really good. It's definitely one of the best special editions to ever come out in 2015. Robert Englund was Freddy. Now he's the Phantom of the Opera. I prefer the DVD cover over this. But this poster's began to grow on me, but it's so cheap. It's like they're trying to cash in more on Robert Englund being the star and being known as Freddy than they really were with trying to sell the movie, I think. They felt that the only way they could sell this movie was if they were to make the makeup look like Freddy and have the little skull mask. Like, wait, I'm not gonna do that. Let me just take it out this way. This picture here of him in the darkness. That's a much better, iconic looking image. Wouldn't you agree? I'm gonna slide this back in here. Oh yeah, 21st century film. I remember hearing a bit about that on a documentary I was watching a bit of earlier. It was Menahem Golan. I forgot how to pronounce it. It was his new production company after he and his cousin Yoram Globus parted ways. Now, that's enough for... Actually, I didn't even really get into this movie in terms of talking. This movie, of course, is the Phantom of the Opera story, but they added like a little Wizard of Oz kind of thing. Or like the sandbag fell from scaffolding on top of the theater stage and knocks Christine out and like sends her into the Victorian London era, because I think they changed it to London in this instead of Paris, because Golan had sets built for London for this movie he did before, and he decided, well, before we tear these down, how about we make another movie? And that movie, of course, ended up being this. And, the stories that Robert Englund told on here were pretty cool, like talking about how he was pretty much planning to take a break, but he said yes, like almost immediately when they said it was Phantom of the Opera, because he said, and this kind of surprised me because most actors are intimidated by this. Like, if you listen to like the stories on Van Helsing or Dracula 2000, it sounded like they had a really tough time trying to cast Dracula in those movies because every other actor was afraid of it, being like, I'm not Bela Lugosi, I'm not Gary Oldman, I'm not Christopher Lee. But Robert Englund embraced being able to play the Phantom of the Opera, because he said that the idea of having his name on the same list as people like Lon Chaney and Claude Rains, among so many of the others, it was too good for him to turn down, he pretty much said. And every actor who's played the Phantom of the Opera has said that Lon Chaney is the one they always go back to as their most favorite, which he deserves, because Lon Chaney is just, he's great. He's a great actor. Probably one of the greatest actors ever, in my personal opinion. Oh, now this one. This one's really good. Kind of forgot about this. It's a documentary directed by David Gregory, who's involved with a lot of documentaries on special features to certain movies. This one is called Lost Soul, The Doomed Journey of Richard Stanley's Island of Dr. Moreau. And pretty much the documentary is about Richard Stanley, famous for films like Hardware and Dust Devil, which I've never seen, but I do enjoy this story. It's just a very interesting story about the Dr. Moreau. But yeah, though, it's like they originally were going to cast completely different people. I mean, pretty much Marlon Brando was signed on from the beginning to play Dr. Moreau. But without giving too much away in terms of the casting, because the casting, when you see this documentary, you're like, really? They were going to cast him? But pretty much, like, one of the stories was they originally hired Rob Morrow from Northern Exposure, and then a personal favorite of mine, Numbers, was cast to play the Castaway character that eventually went to David Thewlis. I mean, like, he was cast and everything, Rob Morrow, but he pretty much jumped the ship, I think, within, like, the first, like, 4 days of production, like, third day of production. He pretty much, like, bailed out, and then they pretty much got David Thewlis completely last minute. I don't know if they tried to get him for this documentary. I wouldn't be surprised if they did try, at least, but he, the main thing I do know about him was he did not have a good time making this movie. But, who was it? Yeah, because Richard Stanley pretty much got fired off this movie because of Val Kilmer. Val Kilmer's such a douchebag. Like, I really thought he was a good actor, but after, like, seeing certain things and reading certain things, especially with what Joel Schumacher, Tom Sizemore, and, like, certain others had to say about him, he seems like a very horrible person to be around. I would not at all want to be associated with a guy like this. But, yeah, the production of that movie went to hell after Richard Stanley got fired and was replaced by John Frankenheimer, who was just as much of a dick as Val Kilmer. And when you get two dicks in the same room, you're gonna just clash.